Another day, another video showing how the establishment media is trying to manipulate people away from voting for Ron Paul. In this video, the manipulation is so over the top and cartoonish that it would be funny if it wasn't so irritating. The underlying message is the same as it's been for a while. You, the voter, have only one real shot at beating Obama. The only guy that's electable is Mitt Romney, so they're sticking with that talking point. But they also know that a lot of people don't like Mitt Romney, so they've chosen another alternative to Mitt Romney. They keep ignoring the obvious alternative, which is Ron Paul, the real anti-establishment alternative. Now it's Jon Huntsman. Of course, it was Herman Cain and it was Michelle Bachmann, but now they've gone to Jon Huntsman. He's the guy who they're just going to keep drilling in your head, and you'll see in the video how they do it. It's pretty funny. They're dealing with a focus group, and so just look at this guy's the announcer's body language and his tone. He's talking to these people like they're children, and it's insulting. I mean, I'd be insulted if I was in the room with this guy. But anyway, prior to asking the focus group about Romney, they of course highlight part of a speech that he gave following the primary, where he got this great big applause line. Prior to asking the focus group about Ron Paul, I bet you can guess what they did. They highlighted a segment of his speech where one of the few times in the entire speech it dropped below the level line on the graph that measures approval or disapproval. So of all of the segments they could choose, they of course chose the one negative segment that they could. I'm going to link to Ron Paul's speech at the end of this video, so if you want to click on that link, you'll see that the vast majority of it is not only above level, there's huge segments where it's pinned to the top. Okay, so the vast majority of it, 90%, is above level or very positive. And of course, again, they didn't want you to see that. And then of course, when we get to Jon Huntsman, this is where they start really pushing the Jon Huntsman thing. So they do the negative Ron Paul thing. Then they want to push Jon Huntsman on you. And so they ask about him repeatedly. First they ask, and there's barely any response. I think 2 or 3 people raise their hand. And then a second later, he asks the focus group again. Just like he hadn't asked it. Well, what about Jon Huntsman? And then at the end, they ask about Jon Huntsman again. You can see that some of the other candidates, like Jon Huntsman, so they're drilling that into your head. It's pretty ridiculous overall. Or when they ask about Ron Paul gets a big response. Despite the negative video they showed, he still gets a big response. I think 7 people raised their hand for that. And then they ask about Mitt Romney, and it's a tie. Okay? But they don't say that. He doesn't say how many. He just says, well, it's not overwhelming, but the implied tone is, yeah, Mitt Romney did really well, even though he did the same as Ron Paul. You'll see for yourself. Here it is.
One of the most interesting things we've been doing tonight is watching as the candidates are speaking. We have a focus group of undecided Republican voters in Charleston, South Carolina, we've assembled. They're actually watching the speeches as well. At the bottom of the screen where the candidates have been speaking, you've been seeing their real-time reactions. Tom Foreman is standing by with that group. Tom, really interesting to watch those reactions. We watched it on the Mitt Romney speech and also Ron Paul. What did we learn about their reaction to Mitt Romney speaking tonight?
Well, I think, Anderson, one of the things that we learned here tonight is exactly what John was talking about a minute ago. There is a struggle going on between voters here who may want a more conservative candidate, but most of all want to win. And they're trying to figure out who can do that. These are all of our folks here. They've been sitting here watching all these speeches patiently tonight here at the College of Charleston, and they've been using these little boxes the whole time where they've dialed back and forth to show whether they approved or disapproved of what they were hearing. All of that was feeding into these computers over here run by Southern Methodist University, where they're analyzing all the data and showing us what it adds up to. And I want you to look at the results when Mitt Romney hit his stride in the middle of his speech, talking about what this president has done and what he will do. Listen and look at the lines, Anderson.
This president has enacted job-killing regulations. I'll eliminate them. He lost our AAA credit rating. I'll restore it. He passed Obamacare. I'll repeal it. And when it comes to the economy, my highest priority as president will be worrying about your job, not about saving my own.
One of the things we heard from this group early on, Anderson, was that many of the people here want to make sure they win, although, interestingly enough, many in the group, all undecided, had a generally favorable view of Newt Gingrich and some of the conservatives. But winning really counts for this group, yes?
Oh, absolutely. No question about that. And this is probably the only time in my life that I have not been able to decide who that candidate's going to be at this point.
Because
in the race.
Winning is that important. Do you agree with this?
When somebody's got to win, I'm not really sure about the question.
Well, do you feel, are you willing to, as this group said, so many in the group here said, even if their first choice isn't selected, they will vote for the Republican nominee because they so much want to win. Are you one of those people?
If I don't get Ron Paul, I'm going Obama.
Oh, you think you'll change? Oh, really?
That's just me.
You would change that much. All right, well, let's talk about Ron Paul, because you raise an interesting point here. Many of the people here, when Ron Paul went negative, Anderson, talking about the war, you remember him talking about that part where he started saying, I'm really upset about the war and all of this? When he did that, this audience did not like it. Maybe you did, but not everybody else. Take a look at this part, Anderson.
They claim it's a moral responsibility to take our young people, put them into the military, and send them hither and yon around the world. It is this liberty movement, which is seen as a patriotic movement, an individual liberty movement, that is saying to the country and to the world, we've had enough of sending our kids and our money around the world to be the policemen of the world. It's the time to bring them home.
Most of the people in this room, Anderson, would say, contrary to our one friend over there, that they are going to back the Republican candidate, even if it's not their first choice, and they don't seem to like that kind of talk they heard there. What about you? You going to back whoever gets it, whether or not it's your first choice?
Absolutely. Whoever wins the Republican nomination's got my vote.
And that'll make a difference. And do you think there is this enthusiasm here for that idea?
Absolutely. I think that people are really tired of the last 3 years, and everybody's ready for a fresh conservative face.
Okay, let me ask you one last question, if I can come over here to you. When you talk about the idea of a conservative voter, that obviously, if you're Newt Gingrich, if you're a Rick Santorum, you're coming down here and you're saying, I've got to get that conservative vote to say, I want a conservative above all else. And yet so many people here, the dynamics on Mitt Romney were, people seem to think he can win. What do you think about that? Do you feel like you want a certain type of candidate, or are you just going to go for the winning candidate?
I'm definitely going to go for the winning candidate, but I'm a little skeptical with Mitt Romney. I think what he's saying is what we all want to hear. I just don't know if I believe him yet.
Oh, Anderson, listen to that. Isn't that an interesting point here? This idea of people saying, I want to believe this guy, I just want to know if he's authentic. All right, all of you who now are leaning heavily toward Newt Gingrich, put your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you in the group here. What about Rick Santorum? Show me your hands. How many of you felt you'd lean his way tonight after what you heard and saw? 1. Okay, how about John Huntsman? 1. 2, maybe. You seem sort of a little hesitant. 3, maybe. This is like an auction. We have three going up there. The very slow process up here. Ron Paul we talked about earlier. Show me the Ron Paul support here. 1, look at this. This is very similar to what we saw tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, although 7. And you said you're still kind of flirting with some other possibilities too. So this isn't all made up. How about John Huntsman? He's a guy who's betting a lot on this. Who's leaning his way? Maybe you back there, maybe 1, maybe 2. Yeah? Yeah, here's the thing. Anderson, I want you to think about this John Huntsman thing in just a minute. We'll come back to that because I want you to see the reaction to that. But now look at the room here when I say this. How many of you now feel like you're going to go with Mitt Romney? There, I could count you all up here. It's not overwhelming, but it looks like you all dropped your hands. You put them back up again so I can really see all of you. There's a pretty good number there. Anybody in here, Rick Perry? Not a one. So, look, there's nothing scientific about this part of it, Anderson, as you know, but you can see, even in this room, how people are getting closer to making up their minds, although I'll tell you in conversation, many of you here still willing to change, not locked down. What about you? You locked down or you still open?
No, not locked down yet, but it's definitely between the two. It's either Newt or Ron Paul, because they're the most conservative and liberty-minded people, or candidates.
All right, so that's what you see, Anderson. People still a little bit up in the air as to what they could do here, especially when it comes to folks like, Huntsman and some of those folks who aren't necessarily out front right now.